Advice on shaping a young child's character. I've actually already done a couple videos, but never particularly focusing on character. But the first video, I actually did a child training series on YouTube. And that first video talks about really establishing obedience and what you need to emphasize and what is probably not so important to emphasize and it shows each stage of the child's life. The second video that I would recommend is one on if I was raising young children all over again, what would my daily routine look like? And that daily routine is important when it comes to building a young child's character. Now I'm going to give this video is going to kind of be done in two sections. One is the foundational principles, and then the second part is how-tos. It's all going to be done in this one video. But I just want you to understand that if you're looking for the how-tos, you just have to wait a little bit because I'm trying to build a mindset foundation. First thing is that there are lots of different elements about your child. They have their personality, which is, I really feel the Myers-Briggs is more of a scientific observation. You know, God classifies different plants. Well, God can classify different personality traits as well. Then we have the Enneagram side of things, which is helpful when you're dealing with the spiritual warfare in a child and the temptations of what needs they're really feeling need to be met, and where they're probably going to go out in the world to fill them if they're not being met through the Lord, and to try to help them to understand what those needs are so that they can go to the Lord rather than letting Satan trip them up that way. Another thing is that your child has a sin nature. Nobody has to teach a child how to lie. Nobody has to teach a child how to lust. You can keep them cloistered in your home and then find out that your child is molesting one of their siblings because sin is within. Yes, there's sin without that can feed that, but sin is within. So understand that the enemy is the sin within, and you will find it in your own home, whether you have the most perfect home environment or not. Also, I want to define success in training your children as you faithfully trained your children in obedience to the Lord, and you faithfully serve the Lord. Because in the end, every child has free will. And their choices when they leave the home do not determine in and of themselves the successfulness of your parenting, because you could be the perfect parent and they could still choose to walk away from the Lord. That being said, we all need to work on the fear of the Lord and being that good parent. And that's what I'll talk about within this. Now, when it comes to shaping a young child's character, time matters. And the Bible says that a child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame. And in this society, we tend to have absentee parents or very, very micromanagey parents. And a lot of times, a parent can think, well, if I can see them and if they're quiet, that means they're being good and obeying. And sometimes we abdicate parenting to a screen, to a video game, to a movie. And if you do that, that screen and that video game and that movie and those YouTube videos will shape your child's character. And the laziness and the pleasure seeking that they gain from that lifestyle will shape their character. On the flip side, if your child is actively engaging in work and chores and devotions and exercise and going outside and reading with you, they will develop the character traits of what you teach them. That will be their example for life. So some families, they grow up where all they do is eat junk food and there's soda for every meal, that water is hardly ever present. What's a vegetable? Ew, we don't like vegetables. And they grow up thinking that is normal. So to try to figure out, well, what is healthy eating takes a lot longer to get on that straight and narrow, to be a good steward. But if from the beginning they've learned what is good and they've learned what is healthy, when they leave, they still have that train up a child in the way he's going. When he is old, he will not depart from it. It's still within them. That is what is normal. So when you train them up, it's important. And when my children were young, I read this book called Raising Godly Tomatoes. It was very important because I had one child who went against all of the everything that I thought I knew about parenting did not work for this one child. So I read this book, Raising Godly Tomatoes, and it was so helpful. And it talked about tomato plants in the garden. You'll see them and they'll be laying on the ground and there's just a whole vine of these beautiful red tomatoes and they're so shiny on top. And then you go to harvest them and they're rotten and smushy and they've been eaten out by slugs. What happened? Everything looked so good and so healthy, and it's because they weren't upright. They weren't staked to where the sun and the protection could get them from all angles. And you are the stake. You are the straight line that they need to be tied to. And when you have a child who is really struggling, or it just seems like every time you turn their back, they're doing something what's wrong, make them your buddy. And that's what I did. Me and my buddy, wherever I go, she goes. And what happened then is not only was I able to keep an eye on her, not only was I able to train her to work and do what I was doing, but also we got to enjoy those times. We got to share more time together than another kid in a different situation, because time is important, bonding is important, giving twice as much love and twice as much praise. When the child who's with you all day, cuts the dinner, well, good job. When they fold the laundry or they sort the laundry, well, I'm really proud of you for really just sticking to it. Good job. I've really noticed how your attitude has been better, and I appreciate that about you. It gives you all the more chance to praise them for a job well done. So raising godly tomatoes, you be the straight stick and you keep them tied to you. I'm just trying to envision a little string attached to all of these things as they're growing. And what happens is when you are around them, you get to see, is their attitude good while they're sorting laundry? Or is it not? You get to see the underside of things because you're the one who is causing them to do uncomfortable things that's against their sin nature. Also, as a parent, children reflect our character flaws right back to us. And they really, really, really put the pressure on you, and it will boil over what's inside of you. And we will not enforce in our children what we do not enforce in ourselves, because a guilty conscience makes cowards out of men and women. And if we're not following through with it, it's really, really hard to tell your children, you know what, that's probably enough ice cream. If we're just having a second bowl ourselves. So what the character traits that I talked to my husband about this, and we were talking about the character traits that are important in life. And he talked about how everything that we train them for in the home ultimately will be transitioned when they're financially independent, when they're independent as a Christian, when they're out in the job force, when they are an example of Christianity to the lost world. And he said things that he sees consistently: people who say they're going to be someplace and then they don't show up. People who say that they'll finish a job and then they leave when it's half done. They're late consistently. That's just who they are, and they just act as if that's okay, if that's just normal. And then he said that when you are sloppy in the details of your life, he said he is of a personality that is a little bit less detail oriented, so he's had to work extra hard to become detail oriented because his job requires it of him. And how important it is to learn those character traits and learn the follow through. And when you go to clean your room, to learn to see the corners and is your bed made. All of those details matter, because when you are working, if you skip a line of something you're supposed to fill out because you just weren't paying attention to it, you didn't think it was important, and then 2 weeks later a customer calls and says, hey, what happened to, and it's because you didn't work on the details. So those are things that he emphasized, but I'm going to emphasize the root of those issues are truly in the fruit of the Spirit: love, gentleness, forbearing, long-suffering, temperance. Temperance is huge because you need temperance and you need patience to be forbearing, faith and joy and peace, goodness to other people, honesty, being a wise man who increaseth in learning, a hard worker versus a slothful man, balancing productivity and rest, and understanding that rest is a gift of God and that your value isn't determined by how busy you are, slow to wrath, slow to speak, gracious, which is giving good or doing good for people who don't deserve it, esteeming others better than yourself, discernment of knowing the difference between right and wrong, or right and almost right, but without developing a critical spirit of, can you believe them? I'm just so disappointed. Why are people like that? Why are Christians like that? They just can't even, you understand? There's a difference between discerning and saying, this isn't okay, without then switching it and continually being bitter and cynical and jaded against those people. So, 11 minutes. Now we're on to the how-tos. A lot of this has to do with the mom, because we spend a lot of time with them, and it does go back into your daily routine. What are you doing? Who are you? Who is Christ in you? How do you love God? How does God love others through you? So, first thing, understand that encouragement and praise is important. A lot of what we do as Christians, we do it waiting for that, well done, thou good and faithful servant. We will sacrifice and love throughout a whole lifetime, knowing that we can measure up. There is a goal to be met. There is success at the end of this. There are rewards for our good works when we have a good heart. So teach your children that there is praise and there are rewards for good effort and good behavior and good motives. And also teach them what success is. Give them a long-range view. Some of the best advice I ever got in being a homeschool mom is know where you want to be at the end of their 12th grade. And keep that in mind, because everything else will probably change from year to year. But that end goal is where you want to teach them. And so for all of my children, I teach them I am on their team and I want them to be a success. And a success is, number one, pleasing the Lord. Look at the Bible and say, how am I living in light of God's commands? Am I loving God and keeping his commandments? That's the end goal of success. But what does a successful life look like? And then I tell them the elements of stewardship and how you need to read your Bible and pray, and you need to take care of your body and your health, and how you need to be diligent about the maintenance of your property, and how you need to manage your finances and be a hard worker. And then you have your relationships, and you have your church ministry, and then you have the fruit of your labor and the joy of life, and how all of this is good, and it's all within God's goal, and I want to get you there. And the reason why I tell you to not do this and this and this and this and this and this is because I want to get you there. I want you to have the life that pleases the Lord and where you can enjoy all of the daily benefits and the fruits of the biblical life. Now, when they're little, I just say, obey. You will fold the laundry. Good job. Way to sort it out. All right, let's hang this up. And they plod along with me on my daily routine, which is on that video. But show them the end goal and help them work towards it. Purpose is a great motivator. Now, in your daily routine, are you involving them in all of your work? Or are you waiting till they go to sleep or till they're occupied, then to frantically get everything done? Because if you're doing that, you aren't teaching them the character, that is your opportunity to teach them the character. You get up in the morning and you make yourselves a healthy breakfast and you read your Bible and you take time to pray because the Lord is your strength of your life. And then you move your body and you exercise and you gain some strength and you work on the flexibility of your spine. I say spine because that's where all of my issues are. But you work on those things and you have them work with you and they can feel the endorphins and they can see the muscles and they build that strength. And then we say, okay, now let's get after it. Let's get this household taken care of. And already you have 3 elements of that stewardship foundation of life. And then when you go to church and you have ministries and that's just part of your routine, they learn church is important. God is important. And then when you're done with work, at the end of the day, then you get to do those things you enjoy and you create. So your daily routine and involving them is very important. But that's just one character. That's just the element of hard work and priorities. But then you have the harder things, those deeper things, when your child annoys you and is ungrateful and is entitled and is demanding and is disobedient or is obedient in the most slow, excruciating, pull your hair out kind of way. How do you respond? Because that teaches them, how do I respond when I can't control somebody? Am I going to be a bully? Am I going to yell? And am I going to scream? Am I going to call somebody names? Am I going to tear them down, express to them how annoying they are, how they make me so mad, how life was easier before I had to deal with them, how I was having a good day except for they? That is where the rubber meets the road. How do you treat people that you can't control? And that goes back to that first video on how to teach your children to obey. So how you respond to children you can't control, because you have to get to their heart. You have to get to their will, their free will. And to be kind and gracious and have self-control and gentle and good and virtuous, all of those things come from you. Siblings and friends, they are very, 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 very helpful in creating opportunities to learn how to deal with the sin nature. Forbearing and forgiving. My son, who is 8, I said, his brother did something on purpose to annoy him, and so I always have to deal with 2 people. The Bible says that he that answereth the matter before he heareth it is folly and shame unto him. And it is really, really natural as a parent to want to be like, I don't even care what happened. You're annoying and you're annoying. I'm not saying I do that. I'm just saying that's what your flesh wants to do. But you have to take the time and hear the matter. And then you have to deal with this child for their purposeful antagonization. And you have to deal with this child who needs to learn how to deal with being antagonized. And this person needs to learn that cruelty is not Christ-like. It's just not. You're supposed to esteem that person better than yourself. That means it's really, really fun for you to bother them and mess with them. But is it fun for them? Nope. Esteem them better. Do what's fun for them and put yourself lower. Now this child over here, I would say that this person who antagonizes on purpose, what I believe is a good consequence for that is for that person to do the other person's chore for the day, or to do something to help out that person so that they become a servant to the person that they lifted themselves up against. Same thing with words when they say things that are awful. How can you then serve the person that you felt like you had the right to lift yourself up above? The person who's been being antagonized. It is good to be able to communicate. Please stop doing that. That bothers me. But you know what? The kid who's antagonizing already knows that it bothers you. That's why they're doing it. It reveals their character. It reveals that they are dealing with pride at that moment. And the only thing that it's going to do to you is make you angry when you realize you can't control them. You're going to say, hey, stop. And they're not going to stop. So what do you do when you can't control somebody? You go back to what mom did when mom couldn't control somebody. And you take a step back and you pray and you ask for wisdom. God, how do I deal with that? That's what I do when my kids push me to that point where I think, I don't even know. I literally do not even know how to deal with this. My mind is going to explode. And I just drop right there. And I'm just, dear God, please help me. And I just start praying out loud because I got no answers. I'm just, and that's what you need to teach your kid to do, to stop and say, oh, dear God, what do I do? I'm so angry. I'm so frustrated. They're pointing out my insecurities. They're messing with me. And then I teach them, I said, it's like a loaf of bread. You're going to bear it. You're going to fill it up and you're going to say, and they did this, God, and they did this, and they did this, and 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 tell the tale to God. And you wind it up and you stick it in a bread loaf and you tie it and you put it over your back and you carry it to the Lord and you lay it at his feet and say, oh God, help me to forgive them. They hurt me on purpose. And I need you to take these. I need you to take this whole bag. I can't carry it. It's too heavy. I bore it until I got it to you. But I don't need to carry that offense. I don't need to walk around with that offense. I don't need to be bitter. I need to take it to you, and you take it and take that thought captive and lock it away. It's not mine anymore. I don't have any right to access it because I'm going to forgive that person. And I'm going to be gracious, and I'm going to do good to the person who doesn't deserve it. Opportunities to learn Christ-likeness. Another character trait, moving on, learning. Within your day, when do you learn? When do you have an active time to learn and read and do something new? And gain a new skill, and gain a new thought process, gain some new information. When do you do that? Because if you want them to be a lifelong learner like the wise man, you need to be a lifelong learner. Set up a time in your day where you read. And where they then, because they follow your routine, where they then also have a time to read. This is the time we read. There's time in the week when we go to the library. And this is the time of the day where we read. And you have your devotions and you have your prayer. You can't control other people. Hospitality. Hospitality is a ministry. You know, God talks about the spiritual gifts, but he actually says that everybody has the gift of hospitality. And he says to use that gift of hospitality without bitterness, without getting frustrated about it. But what I think is important is, are you inviting people into your home or out to coffee who make you feel important, that make you feel special? Is that who you're all the time inviting over? Or do you sometimes invite the feeble-minded, the weak, the lesser respected, the people who love the Lord, but they're awkward? How do you treat them? Do they have a seat at your table? Because if they are welcome into your home and they are considered valuable, then your children will learn that this is how we treat the awkward. This is how we treat the socially strange. This is how we treat the feeble-minded. We welcome them in and give them a place of honor. This is one I just said this yesterday. I care more about what God thinks about me than what you think about me. I said that to my children because you cannot lead somebody that you're afraid of. And if you carry that weight that your kids are going to think you're annoying. You know, this came into play because we watch all of our movies filtered. But we were watching the live action version of Aladdin. And And there's just some music in it that is just not acceptable. It's not godly. I have a video series on what does God think about music, what does the Bible say about music, and it's not. And some of the music is so subtle because rock and roll is really obvious, but then there's some like tribal beats, which really they're tribal beats and they're spiritual and they're to call in demons, and it's associated with nakedness and violence and all of the fruits of it. They're all similar, but it's so hard to tell, and I hate it. I hate it because I've seen what it's done to Christians. I've seen what it's done to the world. And so as soon as it comes on, I'm all like, where's the muter? Ha! Quick, who has the remote? And it can become a distraction to the movie. And I don't care, because I care far more what God thinks about me, and that God is pleased that I am not letting a movie cleave to my heart, setting a wicked thing before thine eye. I don't want it to cleave to my heart. I don't want it to cleave to my life. And if they see that I'm willing to be awkward because I care what God thinks and because I see that it's dangerous and I am willing to sacrifice my life, then they can see that there is a fear of the Lord and that He is of utmost importance. Which leads me to the next thing. Are you asking your children to do all the sacrificing? Or are you willing to sacrifice? And I do see this a lot in movies where parents will watch things alone that have things in it that's not okay. Our philosophy is we watch movies with our children. If it's not okay for our child to watch it, we don't watch it. Because sin is sin. There's no special age you reach where suddenly I am allowed to see naked people because I have seen my spouse naked. No, sin is sin. There is no age limit to it. And yet parents have these rules for their children. Well, you can't watch, I don't know, Narnia. You can't watch Narnia because it says the word magic in it. And so you can't watch that. But I'm going to go ahead and watch Doctor Strange with Marvel because I really, really like the Marvel series. It doesn't make sense. When push comes to shove, when your child is older and says, why couldn't I do that? And you made a big deal about that, and everybody was watching that, and yet you were watching this. Are you sacrificing? Is there a hard line? Is there a real principle behind what you're doing? Or is it just really easy to be like, no, you don't need that. You don't need that. Now, with my husband, I always laugh how when we were kids, our parents would walk in on the one episode where somebody swore, and you're just like, they've never sworn this entire time. I've watched 60 episodes, and the first time that they swore, and of course my parents walks in, and then they say I can't watch it anymore. And we do watch things filtered, so there's no swearing. But that just seems to be, it's so easy for parents to be like, oh, I know you've invested lots of time in that, and you really love those characters, but no more for you. But don't ask me about what I'm watching on my dates. Be consistent. People talk a lot about consistency as a parent. It's not so much do you consistently spank your child every single time they do something wrong. No, who are you? Are you consistent as a Christian? Are your principles, when you push and push and push and push and push, do they hold up? Or have you created a straw man? Dependable, the character trait of dependability, showing up to church and showing up early. It teaches two things. It teaches one, God is important and obeying His commands is important. Number two, it teaches the skill set of how do you get ready early enough to get someplace where you won't ever be late. That is actually a really hard skill set to learn because some people just naturally think, oh, I have enough time. And you know what? Our church starts at 9:30. It takes us 20-25 minutes to get there. We say everybody get in the car at 8:40. And so if we all get in the car by 8:47, we're still going to be to church 15 to 10 minutes early. We just create a huge buffer time, but it's teaching them those habits of if you give yourself a huge buffer time to get there and you set the time to be in the car things can happen and you'll still get there. And it teaches them that being on time is important. That person's time and that person's effort and the Lord and all those people who prepared ministry, they are more valuable than you getting your lipstick on and a Starbucks coffee. I feel like I'm getting a little metally and preachy. I don't have anybody in mind. I don't know. I'm just saying the temptation is real. Being clean is better than being perceived as clean. This goes back to that routine, and we do our devotions, and then we exercise, and then we do our chores for the day. And the other day somebody walked in our house, and it was like 10 o'clock at night. They were dropping somebody off, and they said, "Wow, your house is really clean." and I knew that there was, papers and drawings all over the dining room table, but as a rule of thumb, we are pretty clean. And it's because we habitually clean. It's part of our daily thing. And we consistently clean up after dinner. That's what we do. And so in our bedrooms, there's a time where every day where we clean up. And I remember I have one daughter who, I've probably said this before, but I have a daughter who underneath her, they have a stand-up jewelry box. And then so underneath it, that's kind of where they do their makeup and stuff. And not all of them want to clean up underneath there because, they just need it to be there the next day. And I don't care. You clean up your stuff. So they kind of pushed it to the back by the wall to where people couldn't see it. And I said, so what you're telling me is that it's more important for people to think you're clean and to think you cleaned up after yourself than it is that you actually cleaned up after yourself. And so if we move this out, we'd actually find out how dirty and lazy you can be. And that goes right along with, that's my window, and the wind, it moves when the wind hits at just the right angle. But that's the principle of being a man pleaser. God says over and over, not with eye service as man pleasers, but as unto the Lord. And hypocrisy, does it matter what people think about you, or does it matter what is and what God knows about you? And one of those ways of teaching that consistently is by habitually taking baths and doing your chores. The opposite of that is you just kind of relax and you play first and you just let things be. And then before people come, you have two options. Well, let them just accept me as I am, filthy, or now we're in this anxious panic of trying to clean up and it's going to take the entire day. And then people hate having company over and hospitality because it's going to be this really stressful, you have to do this and do this and do this. And why are you, da, 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 and this hectic, frantic feeling of clean up our life really, really quick because somebody's going to see the truth. Why not let the truth be that you are not as the slothful man in the Proverbs whose field and walls are all covered over with nettles and thorns and falling down? Make work and maintenance part of your life. Finish the job, get it done, finish the job, then have fun. Thank you, Patch the Pirate. We sing that regularly. Abstain from all appearance of evil. That's really important as a parent to don't be alone with somebody of the opposite sex. Don't be texting people of the opposite sex, because when your teenage daughter gets to there, she's going to wonder why she can't text, and you'll just say, because it has the appearance of evil. It makes provision for the flesh. You live a life that has no question. I always tell them, live in a way that if somebody questions you, somebody's going to be like, no, they live above reproach. There's no question. There's no questioning there. That's ridiculous that you would suggest that. I know their manner of life. Lastly, thankfulness versus complaining. This is absolutely something that within our flesh, we want to please us more than we want to please the Lord. We want to please us more than we want to please our parents. We want to please us more than we want to please our siblings. We want to please us. And when we aren't pleased, we want to complain. When somebody says something that's different than how we think, we want to complain about that person. When somebody who is a leader leads differently than we would lead, we want to voice our complaint. And out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. How do you speak about your spouse? How do you speak about your siblings? As an adult, how do you speak about your boss? How do you speak about your pastor? How do you speak about your in-laws, your brother-in-laws, your sister-in-law, your parent-in-laws? How do you speak about your government? How do you speak about the Lord? How do you speak about your job? How do you speak about motherhood? How do you speak about hard work? Do all things without murmurings and disputings. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Give God the sacrifice of praise. Replace all of that complaining with thankfulness. I am so thankful that I can be a mother. I am so thankful that I can be a stay-at-home mom so that I don't have to do all this when I come home from work. I am so thankful that I have a husband who is a hard worker. I am so thankful that I have a husband who cares about my children. I am so thankful that I have Christian family. Even if they're not perfect, even if they don't believe everything that you believe, choose a spirit of thankfulness. This is a very long video. I hope it was helpful.